I'm not Parkinson, and this isn't a formal interview, but Brother Reginald here is due to be ordained later this month in a state perhaps to the west of our currently undisclosed location, and there may or may not be a hard border in place. So we thought we'd better interview him before he disappears off into the sunset. So, Reginald, you're due to be ordained in a couple of weeks, and I hear that Campion College is claiming you as their first Ordinand for their whole alumni group. Is that true?
I believe so. I joined the order in 2014 with 4 other postulants, and one of them has gone on to join a different congregation, and we've had a bit of a mini race because both of us are Campion alumni.
Oh, well.
But I'm happy to say that I'm the first Campion Ordinand, I believe.
Well, we're delighted to hear it too, of course. And was it at Campion that you first encountered the order, or...?
No, I met the Dominicans, I think, intentionally for the first time, in a really conscious sort of way. The last year of my Campion degree, I was starting to think of this question of vocation, and my method of doing that was to Google Catholic religious orders and send out a bunch of emails to a bunch of different ones. And one of them who replied was, at the time, the chaplain for Notre Dame University in Sydney. So set up a meeting with him and had a chat. And the year after that, I also happened to go to Sydney University, and the chaplain there was also a Dominican. So university chaplains played a big role.
And not only a big role, you are working as a university chaplain at the moment, and once you're ordained, you'll be going back to the University of Notre Dame in Sydney to act as chaplain, won't you?
Yeah,
sort of full circle for your vocational cycle then? Or?
Yeah, no, very, hearing for the first time, I think last year, that my first placement would be as a university chaplain was, in many ways a very humbling thing to hear, that I would be assigned to that role, that very role, through which I had received my vocation.
And do you think that helps you in your interactions with students if they come to you with similar questions about vocation? Do you have a unique perspective in that regard?
I wouldn't call it unique, but certainly I can sympathise and appreciate the plight of the typical uni student who might not necessarily know with much clarity about what is going to happen in the near or medium-term future, and all the sort of questions that arise for discernment in that context. Yeah.
And you mentioned that one of your other friends from Campion who joined us for about 5 minutes before leaving for another congregation, he left for a more clerical order, no vows. So do you think as a Dominican, we're religious first, priest second, or given that we're a clerical order, we tend towards the clerical state? What would be your perspective on it, given that you're about to be ordained, but have been a religious in permanent vows for some time now?
Very good question. I think this is going to be a very Dominican answer. There are lots of distinctions to be drawn in this regard. I think there is both a sense in which the Dominican charism is uniquely clerical. Dominic himself was a priest. But I also think that there is a sense in which one can really separate the question of religious and Dominican vocation from the priestly vocation as such. And yeah, I mean, a big thing that played a role in my discernment of Dominican life was this argument that St. Thomas Aquinas makes for why it's okay to join a religious order without putting any thought into the question of discerning whether to join. And his argument is that because religious life as such is a good thing, in fact a great thing, as our Lord says in the Gospels, we can comfortably and assuredly say that it is good for anyone to join, regardless of whether their motives are good or bad, because the very life is going to, transform them and give them something good. So that's not an argument that applies to the priesthood. You can't transpose that to the priesthood. And so I would say that even for me, when I joined religious life, the Dominican life, my own motives were probably, required a bit of sifting, and that real recognition that I had joined with a sense of a priestly calling as well was something that only sifted its way out, through the course of my Dominican life. And all for the better, obviously.
Yeah.
But so I think, yeah, it's definitely not a question to agonize over before, deciding whether to join a religious order or the Dominican order. But there is a important distinction there, which, rewards reflection.
Well, your answer is, of course, fascinating, as is usually the case. But it would be fascinating, even more so, to ask you the same question in a year's time, having been a priest for a year, and see whether anything has changed in that regard. So watch this space. Thank you very much for watching, and we ask your prayers for Brother Reginald as he heads towards his ordination in some Western location far away from here. God bless.
God bless.